Hey guys, what's up? I'm CJ and welcome back to my galaxy. Today I'm doing an immediate reaction to The Uglies. Now, if you don't know what The Uglies is, it was originally a book series that I personally read maybe the first two novels. I think I was reading these novels at the same time as they were coming out. I might be wrong though, so don't quote me on that, but it's a book series. I think there's 4 books and I read the first 2 to recollection, and it's this like YA novel. It was a part of the YA dystopia trend, and around the same time as like The Hunger Games, Divergent, The Maze Runner, those sort of stories. And I believe The Uglies was filmed years ago. The film adaptation back when Divergent was crashing and burning and blowing up the dystopian genre, the YA dystopian genre as a whole. So they've actually had The Uglies in the archives for ages, and I've seen a lot of people on social media saying that they're not looking forward to watching Joey King in this movie, which I find so disappointing. I think Joey King is actually a phenomenal actor. She's just had really bad directors and stories to portray. Just from my opinion, she's probably not the best actor ever, but she's not my favorite, but she's definitely really up there in my opinion. But I don't think she's gonna be good in The Uglies, and I don't think that's going to be Joey King's fault. I think that's going to be the story's fault and like the director's fault. I think the CGI technology that we have isn't good enough for these sort of films, especially when you're not on as big as a budget as like a big blockbuster film. I did actually enjoy The Uglies back when I read the books. I wouldn't say it was the best novel series that I ever read, but it was really enjoyable for like little 12-year-old CJ, and I just remember thinking it was pretty good. It was a pretty good message. It's about like superficiality, and it's to do with plastic surgery and trying to fit into society and those general themes. But let's make one thing clear. I don't expect this movie to be good. I'm expecting to enjoy the movie simply because I remember reading the novels, and I'm gonna be like, well, that's not like the book. Well, that is like the book. I'm glad I got to see that adapted into film, but I don't think this is gonna be good. The CGI I expect to be really, really bad, and Joey King's acting, I think it's probably going to carry the movie as a whole, and I'm really wondering how they're going to translate the relationships of the characters onto screen. So basically, I'm looking forward to watching this film, but I don't expect it to be good. And I think the two can really coexist together. You know, you can like a trashy film. Nobody should care. And you shouldn't care what anyone else thinks. If your favorite movie, your favorite book is The Uglies, go ahead. I'm not gonna call you out on it. I don't care. Anyways, I'm going to go and watch The Uglies, and I'm gonna come back here with my opinion. She's a scar still. Oh, gold eyes. Alright, so it is the next day after I watched the movie. I watched it quite late at night, so I was like, I'm not recording a video right now, but I wanted to come on here, obviously, and we're gonna discuss all the points. I have a bunch of notes written down while I was writing them down while I was watching the movie that I want to discuss. Basically, how bad or how good was this movie? Overall, I think it was not as bad as I actually thought it was going to be, actually. Kind of enjoyed it in a way. Would I watch it again? Probably not. I highly doubt there's going to be another movie, so yeah, I honestly wouldn't expect them to adapt the other 3 novels. There's definitely a reason why it came out on Netflix and there wasn't a whole lot of promotion for it, and it didn't come out in cinemas, and it took so long to be in production. And yeah, it would have, if it was going to get another adaptation, it would have come out during the whole YA dystopia craze instead of waiting until 2024. I think it went into production during 2020. At least that's from what I've seen, it would have been around then, and the rights would have been bought earlier than that. The movie definitely started off with a lot of exposition. It was very Divergent-esque in that way, and I'm so glad that I'm not really that glad, but I'm glad that I recently watched the entire Divergent series, the film adaptations, because that meant I could have a reference point of how bad and how good the actual movie was. And it was a lot like Divergent with exposition. There was too much, and instead of creating a lot of character development and developing the relationships between characters, you were kind of told what was going on and what the world looked like and why, instead of using the show don't tell trope. Is it a technique? It's a technique. Show don't tell. And that's something Divergent also has a massive issue with, is that they just tell you what's going on. Going into this film, I definitely felt like I should be in 2016, like going back all the way before the timeline split when Harambe died. 2016 is where that movie should belong and where it should be. Why is it in 2024? I don't know, but it shouldn't be here. Just like Divergent, the CGI sucked. You could tell when they were on the hoverboards that it was a green screen a lot of the time, and a lot of the background was very obviously CGI'd, and like, you know, the environment where it's very obviously somewhere that they couldn't have set up an entire city to look like a dystopia future. They just had to use CGI and a green screen, and you could tell. We're in 2024 and they were definitely balling on a budget, but come on. Our CGI is so much better than that, or you know what, you wait, you rewrite the script so it's a bit better. That's another thing. The dialogue that they were given sucked, but I think that's because it was the source material. I think from what I can remember from the books, and I surprisingly remember a whole lot from the books, so I think the dialogues being bad was not because of like the director or the actors or anything. Actually, I keep getting distracted. The actors are really good in this. But the source material was really what brought it down. I don't remember it being too bad or as bad as Divergent, because I was really into the Uglies series. And I got bored of Divergent from the moment I started reading it. So I guess the Uglies was better, but it wasn't like a lot better. But overall, the technology really sucked, so they should have waited at least a little bit longer when the CGI was up to the point that they needed it to be for this film, and rewritten the script to be better. When first starting the film, I actually felt like they combined the best friend character and the second book boyfriend character, and eventually the best friend does die or is killed, falls off a cliff or whatever. But I don't remember that happening in the book, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but it felt like the best friend wasn't a love interest in the first novel. David was the love interest throughout the whole thing, and then Tally stole David from what's her name? Shay. Shay was dating David from my recollection, and Tally kind of stole him from Shay, which was weird love triangle thing. But the best friend wasn't a romantic interest, but they made him a romantic interest in the movie, and it seemed like they were combining that character with the boyfriend that appears randomly in the second book. Like, he shows up and they're dating, and then he's the one that has like, in case they like make the second movie, or you know, you haven't read the books or whatever, I don't want to like spoil what happens, but there's a boyfriend that's like right off the bat in the second movie. Just in case you guys don't want spoilers for the rest of the series, I get that. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but I'm pretty sure they combined those two characters, or at least randomly threw in a romantic interest for the best friend, which made no sense to the plot. He didn't need to be a romantic interest. He could have just been a best friend, but he also didn't understand, even though they literally told us what the best friend, that they were best friends because of their scars, instead of showing us that they were best friends. So I didn't actually feel connected to their relationship as an audience member, and so it was weird overall. One thing I found really surprising was the city, right? And I don't know if it's because of the description in the books, and that's just how I imagine it, like the description that we got originally was just that good, but the city was like almost to a T, like perfectly how I imagined it, and it was just like this one big party city that that's how I imagined it. And the bridge, I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought it was gonna be. But the dorms where all the Uglies live, that's not how I imagined it. It gives off, the dorms really feel like the slums in Ready Player One, but the way I imagined it was this like one big, or like a couple of, well, I imagined one building that was really small, full of just a bunch of school children for whatever reason, but I'm sure there would have been multiple described in the books. It was this one big brick building in my mind that was like a really old, rundown brick dormitory that they were in, you know, with plant overgrowth, and it's not very well upkept, and they kind of just forget about the kids until they grow up. That's kind of how I imagined it, and that's not how it was portrayed. You know, like I said, it was like the slums in Ready Player One. That's how it was actually portrayed, except more like more like a school and built together and upkept than an actual slum. When Tally actually ends up going to the smoke, the cinematography gets significantly better, but also that's the part of the movie that I felt like they were really trying to copy the Hunger Games at that point, where you really thought, yeah, this novel series, this whole series as a whole, the story, it was definitely inspired by the Hunger Games YA dystopia craze, or the YA dystopia craze the Hunger Games accidentally created. You could tell, and it was quite interesting because it felt like the first movie, not the rest of the movies that the Hunger Games has, but the first movie that felt kind of indie production movie that became the second part of the Uglies movie, where they were like outside, like in the Hunger Games woods outside of District 12, and it felt more human, but that's a good message for the movie. So I feel like that's something that they communicated quite well, but you could tell there was a copycat. The world building was actually quite good, even though the exposition in order to get to the world building part was too much. It was not balanced at all. It was actually, if they had balanced it quite well, I think it would have been a significantly better movie, because like they were capable of telling us what the world looks like, and that, once again, I feel like would have come from the source material that the author, I think his name was Scott Westerfield, he definitely gave us good world building that Divergent didn't really do. Like, Divergent stripped dystopia as a genre down to like its bare bones, but in the Uglies there was a very clear message behind what was going on in the books. It wasn't stripping it down, it was trying to use the tropes of the time and add a message to it, which I think was quite successful. From what I can remember from the novel and from seeing the movie, it's quite successful in its message. It's just everything was not balanced quite right, so it threw off the rest of the movie. It also wasn't as boring as Divergent, in my personal opinion. I know some people like Divergent and, you know, pop off, I guess. It's not my problem. You can have whatever opinions you have. You can hate the Uglies movie. You can hate the Hunger Games, for all I care. We just have to respect one another's opinions. And I think, my humble opinion, that Divergent was very boring to watch. Oh man, the costume design was probably one of my favorite parts of the movies. They really distinguished between the pretties, the uglies, and the smoke. And I think, and it's really, it is obvious that the way that they use the costume designs, like, it is very, like, I guess tropey in a way, but I think they did it really well and gave them each unique outfits, and I think that was, I'm gonna have to like give it to them. It's not the best thing I've ever seen, but I'm gonna give them the points because I actually quite enjoyed it, because I could understand the environment and it added to the story itself to see them in different outfits. And I especially liked the outfits that I don't remember her name, but the woman, the government woman, I liked her outfit. She was very like prim and proper compared to like and the makeup design. I was gonna say like the not perfect face of Tally, and the makeup design that was able to, except for the prosthetic, you could tell that they were purposely putting some sort of prosthetic on the nose of the best friend. I think his name is Paris, but you could tell the prosthetic was there, but the makeup on his face was actually really good. And I think I'm gonna give them the credit for this, but if they didn't do it, they didn't do it on purpose. I can't believe I'm gonna give you the credit for this, but the faces of each of the pretties, it was so scarily uncanny valley. Like, it wasn't, sometimes it was when they were doing the on the screens that like Tally would like do up her face how she wanted it to look, her procedure to go. That obviously looked like bad CGI, but over the face of Paris and the rest of the pretties, that was actually pretty good makeup, and it looked scary. It looked terrifying, and it had that uncanny valley that CGI has, but it felt purposeful. So, which I'm gonna have to say, like, good job on it. Hopefully that was purposeful and not giving them credit where credit is not due. If we're making a comparison with Divergent, I think we definitely have to come up with the point of the acting and how the differences there are. We had a lot of award-winning actors in Divergent, and despite being award-winning, they were not good in the Divergent series. So comparing it to the acting skills of the people in the Uglies, who I believe they're all, a lot of them are award-winning too, otherwise they're just very prominent actors that are cast in a lot of roles. Like Joey King, for example, I said at the beginning of the video, I actually enjoy her acting skills. I don't think she's like top-notch actor, but I do think in the right role she really does come out with like phenomenal acting skills. I think that Joey King definitely did a better job as Tally than, I don't remember the actor's name, I'm sorry, but the woman who played Triss, I do think Joey King did a better job at that. And honestly, I think a lot of the acting was ever so slightly better in The Uglies, simply because there probably was a better director. A lot of the time, if there's a really good actor in a show or movie and suddenly like they're doing really bad, it's usually the director's fault and not the actor's fault. An example of that I see a lot of the time is actually people referencing Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man. He's like award-winning, he's an amazing actor, and suddenly in Iron Man he's not actually that good. It's usually because the directors in those Marvel Studio movies aren't actually that good and their storytelling is really bad. And I say that as someone who's a fan of Marvel Studios. I don't watch it for like the good directing and the amazing acting, except for like, you know, Haley Steinfeld and Florence Pugh. Love them, but Marvel Studios isn't the best at that sort of thing. So if you apply that to literally any other movie such as The Uglies and Divergent, the actors are really good in carrying the film, but they are stunted in some way in their skills because the director doesn't know what they're doing. I definitely think that happened in The Uglies, but a director was just this much better than Divergent. The one thing that really got me in this movie, that really just brought me out of watching the film altogether, that was so irritating. It was so very obvious that they needed to do reshoots, but because it was in post-production for so long and they filmed it like ages ago, they couldn't do reshoots. So they did a voiceover instead. There are a number of scenes in there that you can see that they're doing a voiceover over dialogue, or like took other shots from the like when they were filming and put a voiceover over it, which is like another reason there was so much exposition, because they lost footage, or there was issues with footage that they couldn't do reshoots for. I've never been so irritated. There are times in films that happens so much and you can tell, but it happened too much in this film. It is like, I can't rewatch it because in the second half of the movie it happened like every other scene. It was genuinely so bad. Credit to them for trying to fix it, but it should have been reshot completely. They should have scrapped the entire project from the beginning. As soon as they saw how many reshoots they couldn't do, they should have scrapped it or started again. Like, good luck with the budget for the film that they were never gonna get back in money, revenue, whatever, same thing. But they would, oh my god, it's just, it was so difficult to watch those scenes because I'm like, that's a voiceover. They're not actually saying, oh my god, they're only using this part of the footage for they introduced the smoke, right? And I think Shay was the person who was doing a voiceover for that. And it was so obvious that the only reason they're using scenes of the smoke was because Shay and her, whatever footage they had of her speaking was out, right? Or the audio had corrupted or something in those scenes, because Shay was directly behind Tally or something. You could see her in the scene and not talking. And it was, they do that sometimes in films, but it was done in such a way that it was obvious that they actually, there was no other choice for them if they couldn't reshoot. The only thing that like redeemed this movie was the fact that the actors were genuinely trying in this movie. I think that there were things from the source material that definitely, like, YA dystopia should have been shot, like, the film should have been made like over a decade ago. I'm sorry, but it really should have. And it sucks that it was in production for so long. Had it been released like 2016 or before, I think it would have done really well. It probably would have been released in cinemas, but unfortunately it wasn't. So I highly doubt it's going to get a second film because of that. Like I said, I will not be rewatching the movie unless you guys unfortunately make me do that, like you did with the Divergent series for my film club. But no, I will not be watching this film again. If the next one comes out, maybe. But for whatever reason, I did actually really enjoy the books, and the film wasn't too bad, and I didn't hate watching it. There's some films you just don't rewatch. Anyways, guys, that is the end of today's video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And also comment down below, did you enjoy this film? Did you not enjoy this film? Did you read the books before you watched the movie? Because I really want to know, what was your favorite part of the books? What did they change from the books to the movie that you're really disappointed that there was a change for? Let me know in the comments down below all of your thoughts. I'd really love to hear about it. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, but I've been CJ, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!